This particular model has many improvements over the old BD5J. There's many aerodynamic improvements. It took me around 15 months from start to finish. BD Micro's plan and their program is designed so that when you successfully complete the airplane, it will be as perfect as it possibly can be. And I currently have about 30 hours on it, and it's an incredibly wonderful airplane, does everything well, and a lot of fun to fly.
Spirit of Aviation Week streaming is brought to you through the generous support of Dynon Avionics. Learn why more than 20,000 pilots already fly behind Dynon at dynon.aero.
It's Steph Strickland here with another segment for EAA's Spirit of Aviation Week, part of our broader EAA Together initiative. And one of the things that's really bringing a lot of people together is STOL. So we have this incredible STOL panel for you right now. Let's introduce you to everyone. I can't wait to talk about this type of flying because I find it super fascinating. I want to introduce you first to a man you probably already know, Mark Patey from Best Tugs. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good. We're having a great time out here in Utah.
So I want to know what you're flying these days, and this is your opportunity also to drop in the new helicopter in the mix as well.
Well, I'm still flying my Carbon Cub, and I'm building a new Carbon Cub as well with a 330 horsepower Lycoming Thunderbolt, so that's been quite a project. And in between sanding parts and making an airplane, I've been flying a little Schweitzer 300C helicopter, which has been a lot of fun. But we're at pretty high altitude here in Utah, so it's kind of a one-place helicopter up here in Utah. It's not a real powerful chopper, but I love it. It's fun.
When you say you're high up there, that's something that STOL does particularly well. Let's talk to Trent Palmer now. Hey, Trent, where are you joining us from?
I am here at my house just north of Reno, Nevada. And yes, I understand altitude like Mark and Kevin do as well. My house is at 5,800 feet, and I think density altitude on any given day is like 8,000. So,
ooh, what are you flying these days?
Same thing I'm always flying in my videos, the Kit Fox STI. I call it the Freedom Fox.
Yeah, I wonder why, given the beautiful paint scheme. We'll talk about that. I'm curious how you came up with that. Let's bring Kevin Quinn into the mix right now. Hey, Kevin, how are you?
Hey, Steph, thanks for having us.
Absolutely, my pleasure. So tell me a little bit about what you're flying these days.
I'm flying my Carbon Cub. It's a hermaphrodite of a Cub, so to speak, and I have a Cessna 180 and fly a paramotor as much as I can. Anything with wings and gets us in the sky is what we're about.
That works for me. Nat Esser joining us now as well. Nat, you are joining us from Canada, correct? Where are you?
That's right. I'm in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And yeah, these days we're not flying anything. Unfortunately, our engine is in pieces waiting for parts coming from Europe. But once we get it flying again, we have a Kit Fox Model 7.
But you also fly much bigger airplanes as well. Tell me a little bit about what job pays the bills for you.
Yeah, I fly the Airbus A320 up here for Air Canada. So yeah, that's the day job, and then I fly real airplanes that you need to know how to use your hands and feet for fun.
Oh, I think everyone on the panel loves that answer right there. Yes. Round of applause. Nicely done, Matt. Nicely done. So, Mark, I want to start with you because one of the things that we're all seeing is how COVID has really reshaped the landscape of doing business, particularly in aviation. And there's so few bright spots that when there is one, I just really want to make sure to highlight it. You're actually hiring right now. Tell me about what Best Tugs is looking for.
Well, yeah, we feel really fortunate. We were worried about COVID, I think, like everybody is, and of course we still are. But we just came off another 3 record months in sales in a row. So we've been fortunate in the aircraft tug building business to see growth through this. I don't know if it's people are afraid to get on commercial jets or afraid of COVID, so they're flying small planes more and traveling more, and suddenly realizing pushing's too hard. Why not have a Best Tug? But right now we're hiring, we're looking for another full-time engineer. We're hiring another sales position, a marketing person, and then we need about 8 more people out on the assembly line floor. So welding, fabrication, anybody that's willing to work hard, we're looking for them. And they have to be kind of nice, fun people too. We actually require smiles at work. So.
Hey, I think that's totally reasonable. Every time I've had a chance to interact with you guys, it's always a good time. So I'm all for a good, positive workplace for sure. Trent, out of curiosity, a lot of folks know you from flying and from YouTube, but maybe they don't know sort of the day job and what lets you have the fun that you do. Tell me more about what pays the bills, what keeps the lights on.
Yeah, I fly drones in the film industry. Basically, we shoot movies, TV shows, commercials, anything that you might see air on TV or on a big screen is the stuff that we shoot low range aerials for.
Do you have to come up with the storyboard for that? Or does some director just tell you, I want it to look like this? I mean, or do you just have to show up and just like do exactly what they tell you? How much creative freedom do you get?
It varies, but the bigger the job, the more it's scripted and the less say I have. A lot of times I'm just the drone driver. They tell me where to put it in the sky. I put it there and move it when they tell me.
Hey, pays the bills. I like it.
Yep.
Kevin, Quinn, what for you keeps the lights on at home?
I've had a heli ski operation for the last 23 years, and I feel very fortunate the fact that we've grown into the largest heli ski operation in the United States. And so literally it's become something that I never thought imaginable. It's provided things that I never thought possible. And it's turned into all sorts of things. I'm basically a travel agent, sending people all over on trips all over the planet because they learn to trust us. They trust their experience that they had in Alaska. And that's kind of what I do. And we recently just sold. And so I'm in the business of writing stock certificates and trying to close that up and tidy in last season. And we've got so much going on now with STOL Drag and High Sierra and Flying Cowboys. There's just, what isn't there to do? I find that if there's some free time during the day, we're probably not doing something, and maybe we should get back to work.
I don't think there's a pilot out there who's not type A in some capacity or another. Like and no matter what that looks like, even if you're laid back, you're still doing a million things. I think that's what it takes to probably be a successful pilot. Nat, for you, we know because you've talked about the fact that you are a commercial pilot, but you have you've got a check ride coming up. So tell me a little bit about career-wise where things are at for you.
This could be a really long story, but I'll try and make it short. But back when things were still moving in the airline industry, I was able to hold the captain position on the Airbus A320. And so my training started right before all of the COVID things all started to take everything a different direction. So I'm just about finished my my left seat upgrade training. My check ride's on Friday. So yeah, I've been spending a lot of time in the books getting ready for that, but it should be pretty cool to be able to do that job for a little bit. But now I'm going to be going back to being a first officer on something in the fleet at some point in the next little while because of all of the layoffs and everything. So either way, it was really cool to be able to get that training in and to learn a lot through that whole process. So.
Well, and eventually air travel will obviously return, to the levels that we're used to. Nat, I want to take a look at some of the videos and photos that you sent to us of your incredible STOL flying. You placed 16th in a competition, right? Tell me about competitive STOL flying.
Well, my husband Josh went down to High Sierra in 2018 for the first time, and I unfortunately wasn't able to make it. But as soon as I saw the videos of like Trent and Draco flying the STOL drag racing. I just thought it was the coolest thing. I was like, I want to do that, whether I'm competitive or not. I just want to go out and try it. It was really my first ultimate goal. And so then once we had a plane that I figured would be somewhat suitable for the it was just a matter of finding a place to practice. So that video that I sent you there was the only place I could find to practice that was close to home, which was just a little 3,000-foot grass strip, about 20 minutes from our home airport. And so we were really only able to get in about maybe like 15 or 20 runs with Jason Boussat before we headed down to High Sierra. So we were never like actually able to race head to head, which I think would have been really helpful, because once I got down there, you don't realize how much it messes with you to have Steve Henry way ahead of you and then slowing down. And yeah, so it would have been nice to have some more head to head practice, but it was an unreal experience. Like I said, I didn't expect to perform well or, to place or anything. I was just out there to have fun and to hone my skills a little bit. And so I definitely accomplished that. So.
Well, Kevin, High Sierra is sort of your baby, and I remember you telling me, you're like, boy, this Nat gal, she really gets it. And everyone I've talked to who's been to High Sierra is like, it's a must attend event. What is it you think that makes High Sierra so special?
I think that it just draws so many like-minded individuals, whether you're an astronaut, a farmer, concrete worker, redneck bush pilot like us. Everybody comes together and we're all like-minded, and it doesn't really matter what's going on in the world, because we're talking about tire size and upgrades to our aircraft. And, for kudos to Nat, we need more women doing what we're doing, because they're out there. I think that they're intimidated to show up. There's a forum, Ladies Love Tail Draggers, and there's a lot of really good women that are flying these aircraft that we're doing. But for some reason, it's so heavily male dominated that we're really trying to encourage these ladies to come and perform. And I mean, Nat's a case in point. She showed up at High Sierra. We had 100+ airplanes trying to qualify. Nat qualified in our top 16. And that was just with very little practice. And so she's going to come back this next year. And with all of the things that's been canceled and whatnot, we're going to see Nat racing in Reno next year, which is just awesome. And I think the future's bright. There's a big opportunity. High Sierra created, a sort of a core culture of, for lack of a better word, amongst folks, but it's grown into this global group of pilots where some of my best friends are part of this High Sierra group. And, gosh, now we've got 10, 15,000 people that are on a mailing list. And I feel like I know all of them by first name basis. And we start seeing these people show up at various fly-ins around the planet. And it's just created something, again, I never thought imaginable. And I feel very fortunate to be able to be surrounded with so many great people that have helped put it on. It's awesome.
Well, this is a great chance for me to get everyone's opinion. So, and I'll work through this round robin. Let me start with you, Trent. What are your opinions on what it's going to take to get more people, women, men, or whatever, youth? What's it going to take to get more people involved in aviation, general aviation, and STOL? I definitely think your social media videos help. What's something else you're doing?
I think it's just getting new eyes on it. I think every child, when they're growing up, probably dreamed of flying, dreamed of having a toy airplane, whether it's full size or RC. And I think showing that it's achievable and how much fun we can have with an airplane, and that it's not just overly ridden with rules and regulations and the freedom that comes with it. I think just showcasing that, getting new eyes on it, showing how fun it can be, how great of a community it could be. Because I had no idea getting into aviation that it would just be such a amazing friend group and almost brotherhood that I think you really have to be a part of to understand. So,
Mark, what do you think? What is it going to take to get more people involved in aviation?
That's a great question. One of the things that's amazed me is how few people really understand that it's something that you can do for fun. I would argue most people coming out of high school or even going into college, when they say, hey, you want to be a pilot, they're like, it's not really the career path I'm looking for. I want to be home more. They don't really recognize that you can be a pilot, not just as a career path. You can do it as something that's fun. And you'll see people like Nat who who does both, but there's the flying that pays the bills, and then there's the flying that you just do and you write the check to do it because it's so fun. You're willing to write a check to do it as opposed to get a check to do it as a job. And that message needs to get out there. I stop, I'll keep this really short, but I think it's important to know. I stop people at the fuel pump every day because we have a local flight school at our airport. And if I see someone new, I say, hey, first flight? Yeah, just trying to see how I like it. And I'll talk to them about flying and how much fun it is. And when they come back, I'm like, how was it? And I had a guy, on his return flight, I stopped him and instructed him. I'm like, how was your first flight? He says, oh, it was so fun. I loved it. I said, oh, great. So you're going to become a pilot then? You're going to keep going? He goes, oh, no, it's not. It's just not something I want to do for a living. And we were talking about the whole time flying, about what it takes to be commercial and how much you pay and how long. And I said, well, why not just be a pilot? And he literally looked at me like that had never even crossed his mind. He's like, what do you mean? I said, just be a pilot for fun. He goes, people do that? And I looked at his flight instructor and I said, what is wrong with you? Just because you're on a start focused career path, 250 hours, flight instructor, build hours, get a job. I'm like, doesn't mean the guy flying with you, that's what they're going to want to do. Why not just go up there and love aviation for the sake of loving aviation? And that's what's so great about what Trent's been doing and Kevin Quinn with his events and everybody that's putting videos out there is telling the world aviation can be a passion and a hobby and a way to spend our money. And it, not that it has to be a lot, and you can make it affordable, but it can be something we do for fun. It's not just a career path, and most people don't know that.
I still go through and just peruse Barnstormer. Like I'm just a student pilot. I've not flown 1 hour in anything. And you'd be amazed. There is a glut of airplanes out there. Now, granted, it might be underpowered, slow, and old, but I don't care. I want to ask you, Kevin. Kevin, what do you think it's going to take to get more people involved in aviation?
Tell the world. I think somebody asked me a long time ago about my business plan for my first business, and they said, "Well, you got a business plan? What's your strategy?" I said, "Tell the world." And with what we're doing, it's the exact same thing. My wife always gives me a hard time. What are you doing on that damn Big Tired Pilot page again, or Backcountry Pilot, or supercup.org? And honestly, I'm just posting a picture or something, some sort of content. I try to make it daily to just keep. It's like gospel. It's church. And the more people that live it, breathe it, tell somebody about it, it's just going to grow. And we've all become passionate about what we're doing. And the day of the $100 cheeseburger is sort of a thing of the past. Pack up your peanut butter and jelly, put it in your cooler, and fly out to the middle of nowhere and enjoy paradise because there's nobody around. And people are catching on to that now. They realize that, man, I can actually go out and get away from the masses and do this. And it's, people say, oh my God, it's so expensive. Well, everything you have a hobby in is expensive. I don't care if you're into boats or cars or airplanes or collecting dolls or toy houses, whatever. It's put your passion behind it, live it, breathe it, and tell somebody about it. It's going to grow. And we're in an opportunity, like you mentioned a little bit ago, Steph, that I was part of this extreme ski movement 20 years ago. Well, that turned into the action sport industry. Every commercial was a skier, skydiver, base jumper, surfer, you name it. And now, just for a quick story I saw the other day, and these guys have heard it before, but I turn on the TV, it's prime time. Here's a little J3 Cub landing in a field and caught my attention. What the heck is this? And this old guy with the gray hair leans in the back. All you see is this beautiful sunset, this little towhead kid, and he hands the brown paper bag, and you see the golden arches, and it rests out. That's the end of the show. And there was no real branding other than the logo. And McDonald's has backcountry flying on primetime television. Like, we're going mainstream and we're just getting started.
It is some of the sexiest flying out there when I take a look at the videos and the images. Nat, from your perspective, what is it going to take to get more people into aviation?
I think it's just letting people know that they can do it. I think I have so many people that come up to me, different times and say like, wow, what you do is so cool. I could never do that. Especially women, a lot of women, I could never do that is always one of the first things they say to me. And I just tell them like, yes, you could, here's how. And so, it's sort of inspired me to try and be a little bit more posting a little bit more because I'm not huge with the social media stuff. I'm not so good at all that, but it's given me the incentive to want to let people know that, you can do it. Anybody can do it. You have to want it bad enough. So.
that, when you talk about tailwheel flying in particular, I had just always assumed that was never something I was going to be able to do. Everyone had me freaked out that the first thing I'm gonna do is ground loop the airplane. And that's going to be the end of my flying experience. And it was actually someone on Instagram. Her name is Mindy. She goes by Schmindy. And she brought home her plane Dreamsicle. And I just thought to myself, wait, that was her first solo, was bringing her airplane home. Like, I can do this. So to your point, I do think that is valid. And we appreciate your efforts on social media, because people see it and then they realize they too can do it. Now let's talk about some of the fun stuff. I want you guys each to give me one of your favorite flying stories, or just something that was really cool, a cool day, a fun event. And Trent, I'll go ahead and start with you. Is there one day in particular that was really memorable? I know that's going to be hard to choose.
I know, you throw me on the spot here. I mean, there's a ton, but one that probably stands out the strongest, and Quinn remembers this because this was really my start to backcountry aviation. And I was, I don't know what, an 80-hour pilot. I had just got my Kit Fox. I took my wife up to Truckee for breakfast and see Quinn. He comes walking into the little restaurant there, and he's like, "What are you doing? Let's go fly." And so he has me follow him. We went out to a lake out here just outside of Truckee, and leads us into a spot that I still think is not the easiest spot. I think it was all of 400 or 500 feet usable. I had an 80-horse engine, my wife on board, full fuel, little tires, and he just talked me into there. And that was the day that it was like, okay, no, I can do this. And from there, I was just like, I got the bug. I was hooked. So that was probably.
And now you're flying and sharing that passion with so many other people. Mark, what is a flight that is particularly memorable or fun for you?
It all comes down to family. I think the whole aviation backcountry thing has kind of become a family community, but and I think that's what draws people in so much. But my most memorable flight wasn't even a really big planned thing. I wanted to go flying. I was working and just needed a break. And Best Tubbs is right next to the airport. So I went over and pulled the helicopter out, and my wife was out to take some friends flying in her Cirrus. And then my son Paxton had showed up to go flying with his wife. And I'm like, we got 3 Pateys all showing up at the airport at the same time. And so we all got in our aircraft, went flying, and my wife took the lead because she had to kind of set the pace with the full flaps in the Cirrus to set a safe pace for her. And I pulled up in the helicopter in formation, and my son in a Super Cub off formation. So we had a helicopter, a Cirrus, and a Super Cub flying all over Utah Valley for about an hour in formation flight as a family. And I literally got on the radio. It was almost one of those spiritual experiences for family. And I'm just like, is this really our life? I mean, is this really happening right now? I'm in the air with my wife and my son and friends, and we're just flying around. I mean, just made me grateful to be an American, made me grateful to have my health and my family. And it's just almost emotional to think about it. And that was my most memorable flight, was just to be there in that moment.
That's pretty powerful stuff. And I'm glad that you were able to have that moment with your family. And I hope for folks out there watching, or maybe considering continuing on with their, pilot journey, that, that they look to you and they see kind of all the great things that you can accomplish. Nat, I'm curious for you if there's a particular flight or a moment that really stands out to you as just being exceptional. And that could also include commercial flying as well. It's really open for you to tell me.
Well, Josh bought our Kit Fox kit probably like 8 years ago now, and it took him about 6 years to build it. So that whole time we were just looking forward to having the airplane, going out camping, landing in the backcountry, being out all on our own. So last year we got our first chance to do that before winter kind of really set in. And so we took a trip out with a friend of ours to this strip called Ram Falls. It's just in the foothills in the Canadian Rockies. And it was like this beautiful grass strip. We parked the planes, we hiked a little bit and set up camp on the edge of this river valley, and we made a fire and we ate dinner, and it was just like everything had come together in this way that we had really envisioned for so long. And so I think that's probably the most memorable one for me right now, is just like finally doing that, you know, and making it happen and realizing like, oh, we got there, like what's next, you know? So
6 years of putting that together, I'd be like, I'm so ready. Kevin, what is something for you that really resonates, a particular flight or a location?
You know, I sit and think, I'm watching each one talk, and there's so many. I remember Trent's first ever off airport there at Stampede. That was pretty cool. I remember his first water ski trip. I remember a trip with my family that wasn't so enjoyable, that got really, really nasty coming back from Moab. And I've got everybody on board literally like erupting like fire hydrants inside the airplane and getting sick. That was a memorable one. I love watching as well, you know, one that, and this might be a surprise to Mark, but one that resonates with me almost when I fly every day, because I've been practicing. I'm coming for you, Mark. Landing uphill and rolling backwards downhill and then taking off. I love that video, what he and Jason are doing when they land up. You got to do a little pirouette through figure eight of pylons, and you got to back downhill. I've been practicing my backward skills. Awesome. And then our low and slow stuff that we do across country is incredible. And there have been so many stories that have come from that. I mean, I don't know, from how I got my Carbon Cub, which is a story in itself, where I'm doing 60 miles an hour and I'm overheating on every cylinder. And I got Trent and Corey and a few others literally doing circles around my airplane as I'm trying to keep cool because I can't climb or descend. And that's when I opened the phone call to make and order my Carbon Cub. That was a big one. You know, the Oshkosh, every time you come around that corner and you're like coming into the Coliseum, so to speak, and you see all the people and the lights, and here we come to land up on the line and get her stopped, and you hear everybody erupt. That's an awesome one. High Sierra, watching Nat and everybody race. And of course, I'm the starter. I don't get to play, but my mouth just gets loaded with dust, and you know, I can make milkshakes out of the dust that's in my mouth as they go. I mean, that's an incredible one. And then, you know, something that stands out big time when I think about it is we're all at Madison, and I know Trent because he's standing next to me and I remember his reaction, but it was the arrival of Draco. Draco landed at Madison right in front of us. He stopped in 30 feet. Mike and Sneed were on board, and we all looked at each other like, oh my God, what did we just witness? The only thing that would have made it better is if he'd stopped, lit the afterburners, and went and landed on the moon really quick, because that's how blown away we were. Again, I could go on and on by so many. And then, of course, every time I have my kids on board, I mean, there's been so many. I feel very, very fortunate to have. I mean, that's aviation. It's memories.
Yeah,
good and bad.
Memories. It's well, right. You know, it's interesting that you would mention Draco, just because I did not know what STOL was. And my very first introduction was actually working with the EAA team. And I went out to do a Facebook Live, Mark, with your brother, Mike. And it was Draco. And I'd never seen anything like it in my life. And it absolutely planted a seed. Kevin, that's when I met you. Trent, I think you were out there as well. I want to ask you guys what Oshkosh means to you, what EAA Air Venture means to you. Mark, let's go ahead and start with you. I think there's definitely a sense of friendship and camaraderie as kind of the world comes together and the experimental aircraft lovers all come together.
Well, there's obviously that. And Oshkosh, for my family, has been a pilgrimage. We've gone 20 years in a row. We've never missed an Oshkosh. Of course, this year, I'm not going to count that as missing because it didn't happen. So we've been 20 years. We haven't missed it. When we first started, I was flying an RV-6A, which is the first plane I built. I flew my kids, had a third seat in the back. So it's experimental. You could add another seat belt and a headset. But every one of my 4 sons have had their diapers changed in the swamps of Oshkosh rainstorms in a tent.
Yes.
We would go out there and camp in tents in the rain and the swamp. We'd stay all week, no matter how bad the weather was. And finally, as life got on and we had the ability to get a hotel, we tried that. And the problem with that is I missed the hanging out as a family after the show's over at 4 o'clock. My favorite part of Oshkosh is like 4 o'clock till bedtime. And so the camping experience, it's a family thing, and not just my family and changing kids' diapers and tents, but everybody else. So now now we've graduated to motorhomes. So we take the motorhome, and my sons pull camper trailers. My twin brother Mike, of course, takes a motorhome. So we have like the Patey family road at Oshkosh, and I don't see that ever changing. I mean, to be there, you know, brothers and sisters and husbands and wife and the whole family all in separate campers hanging out with all our aviation family that we get to know through the year of other events and social media, which has been great for that. So,
Trent, what do you think of EAA AirVenture? What does it mean to you?
How do you follow that up? You know, I think to me, really, it's the, like, being that engulfed in aviation and 500,000 like-minded individuals, everyone's friends. It's just so fun to go there and meet people that you've met digitally and get to finally sit down and interact with. And like Mark was saying, just getting to be there and enjoy it and spend it with all your aviation buddies.
Kevin, what do you think?
I couldn't agree with both of them more. I mean, Oshkosh is such a unique opportunity to gather like we do. And I mean, it's, what else can you about it? It's a celebration of aviation at its finest. It's the largest aviation gathering on the planet. And High Sierra is going to crush EAA soon. No,
I like that.
We are the backcountry version of Oshkosh, and unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do that this year. But we got big things coming, and Oshkosh. I mean, what can you say? It's legendary. Everybody has been there, and just to be able to go there and be able to be a participant, we're extremely grateful. I mean, it's something special.
Nat, I know you have had a chance to visit Oshkosh yourself. I remember my first Oshkosh experience being incredibly overwhelming just because of the sheer size and scale of it. How was your time at EAA AirVenture?
You know, it was unbelievable. I've only been once, and it was a lot of years ago. But that was actually the year that we were kit plane shopping, and so we were able to just wander. It was amazing, just wander around. You could talk to the owner of every single company pretty much and get the inside detail of what was better about this plane versus that plane. And so that was, I believe Josh ordered the kit right after we left. So that was a really amazing thing about it. And now it's you know, now that there's such a community and we've met all these guys, like next time we go, I think it'll be a little bit of a different story, knowing all these, the STOL community and everybody from High Sierra. So I'm looking forward to going next year for sure. But yeah, no, it was just amazing to see everybody coming together in one place at the same time. It was really cool.
Oh, Nat, we are going to have some fun. I want to ask everybody about their very first solo flight. Because everyone has a unique story. So Nat, we'll start with you. Let's go back to the day that you finally soloed an airplane. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I was 16 years old. I had about 8 hours flying a Schweitzer 233 glider. I got it's way less than that. I think it's 8 flights, about 12 or 15 minutes long each. So yeah, 8 flights in a glider, and then they send you out by yourself at age 16. So it was pretty cool. Yeah, it was very, very memorable. And I think the biggest thing that stood out for me was, you know, it's a tandem aircraft, and so you're sitting in the front. And in that case, you never really know if your instructor is kind of on the controls, helping you a little bit. And so that first solo flight really solidified, like, oh yeah, I'm the one doing this. This is cool. So yeah, no, it was unbelievable.
Kevin, tell me about your first solo.
You know, I was fortunate to be raised in Alaska and flying around with my pops. And I was in his airplane since I was a little kid. And I wish I could be full transparency, but I don't really remember the solo other than the fact I remember it being in a 172. It had electric flaps. And rather than going 10-degree increments, I remember just hitting the switch and it went all the way down and the airplane started to rise and things were going to hell in a handbasket quick, but I was able to recover and remember that there were 10 degrees and I could bleed them, and I came in and landed, you know, with no big deals. But that's kind of where I remember the flap handle. But aside from that, you know, I think all of us have been pretty lucky flying a bunch, but first time getting in an aircraft can be definitely intimidating for folks. That's for sure.
It's good. I'm glad it all ended the way it was supposed to. Trent, what was your first solo story?
Well, I should preface this with the way that I got into aviation was not the standard way. With FAA rules at the time, to fly my drone commercially, I had to get my private pilot license. And I was terrified of flying, terrified of heights, wanted nothing to do with it. So it was a job for me. So come solo time, it was probably at like 10 or 12 hours. And my flight instructor's like, all right, it's that time. And I was like, okay. And let them get out. And I just did my thing. And it was really like, I feel bad looking back at it because it was a big moment, but I didn't make it a big moment. So I think once I got my Kit Fox and did my first solo in that was probably the one that really, hit home, especially being tail wheel. And I was so on edge about ground looping, so scared of the thing still, but knowing like Nat said that, okay, my instructor's not doing anything. I have this. It was pretty cool.
I think that that's actually very, very interesting, especially for someone who wasn't too keen on that type of flying, and then to turn around and do everything that you have done with it is incredibly impressive. And I'm glad I asked. Mark, for you, what was your solo story?
One thing stood out quite a bit, and that's how alone I felt. To look over the right seat and it's just a big old empty nothing. I'm like, so that's the color of that seat. Okay, I didn't know it was tan. It was. I remember being excited. Of course, my adrenaline was going. This is a long time ago, but that sense of being alone was pretty powerful. And what's interesting to me now as I look back and I go, my first real flight by myself in aviation, I felt more alone than I've ever felt in my entire life, alone and vulnerable. Yet aviation now has made me feel less alone and more a part of something and less vulnerable than anything in my life ever could have been. I'm surrounded by loved ones and strangers that act like loved ones because of aviation. So from my first solo and an overwhelming sense of aloneness to today where I just feel surrounded. Man, we went to Iceland and went to a small airport and people walked up to us and said, I know you, I know you, you're Draco. And I'm like, no, that's my twin brother, Mike. But to be surrounded by people that just love you and know you anywhere in the world. And it's not, you don't have to be a YouTube person to be that. Any pilot knows that you could walk onto any airport in any country and say, hey, I love your Mooney. How long have you had it? And you've got an instant friend, a legitimate friend. I mean, it's a neat class of people. So my first solo was what brought me into not feeling alone.
Our airport here, our little airport, has a picnic table that's out there, and you can watch the planes take off and land. And I bring my daughter down there sometimes. And I do it because I think a lot of people don't realize that even though those small airports are surrounded by fences, they are remarkably welcoming. We know it in the community when you fly in and fly out, but I think the general population doesn't know that they can just go down there and develop a respect or an interest in aviation and not have an immediate connection to the community. It will develop if you just show up. Trent, we know how you found your path into aviation. So Mark, let me stick with you. Did aviation run in your family? Given that both you and your brother are interested in this, was it familial? Where did it come from?
I think it was kind of a similar story. We were building RC airplanes. We grew up in a large family with no money, and so we started really, really cheap, and we always had a love of flight and aviation. But the genesis of actually becoming pilots was Mike had gone to an air show in California, and I didn't know he had gone to an air show, and I was at work and just wanted to get out and go for a drive. And I went down to the airport, started watching airplanes take off and land, and I thought, I want to learn to fly. Mike was at an air show having the same decision at the same time. So while I'm out on the ramp looking at an airplane for sale, I'm thinking, I got to call Mike and tell him I'm buying this airplane and we're going to learn to fly it. He called me and says, hey, Mark, I have a great idea. And I'm like, what's that? He says, we should buy an airplane. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm standing next to a 172 right now that we can have for $36,000. He says, buy it. We're going to learn to fly when I get home. And that's how it started. It was a twin moment. We had both decided on the same day in two different parts of the country that we were going to learn to fly. And so we did.
Well, okay, so Nat, I'm sorry because you have to go after that. That is incredibly cool. Like to think that like in two separate parts of the country, the mind meld as twins came into full effect. Nat, did aviation run in your family, or what was sort of your path, especially as it pertains to going after your commercial license?
Yeah, it kind of ran in my family. My grandfather was in the Air Force, and I grew up near Trenton, Ontario, which is a big Air Force base there. So we were sort of on like the base turn for one of the runways where I lived. So I was just constantly watching airplanes fly over and trying to figure out what they were. And my grandfather especially, would take me to every air show. And so at a very young age, I just started telling everybody, you know, when you're that age, when everyone asks you what you want to do when you grow up, I told everybody that I was going to be a fighter pilot. And so I missed the mark like a little bit, but yeah, no, I just pretty much started flying as a teenager. And then once it was time to not be in high school anymore, I sort of went, well, I don't know what else I want to do. So I just sort of kept going on that path, and ended up going to a Seneca College, which is in Toronto in Canada, where you get a 4-year degree plus all of your licenses and everything. They call it a frozen ATPL. So then you pretty much just have to go out and get your hours towards your airline transport pilot license. So yeah, I just sort of started flying and then never stopped. The bug had me from a really young age, and that was it.
Trent, I want to ask you about your paint scheme, just because it is singularly recognizable from great distances, and I love it. So tell me when you decided to make the Freedom Fox.
So I didn't pick that. Actually the builder of my plane, because I didn't build it, did that paint job. And when I first saw it, I didn't like it. I was like, that's kind of cheesy. I don't know if I can get into that. But at the time, I decided I wanted a Kit Fox, and it was really the best one that fit my bill. And so when I went and saw it for the first time, I was like, oh man, it's cheesy, but I kind of like it. I'm going to call it the Freedom Fox. And it was kind of a joke. And then now at this point, I don't think I could get rid of it. It's like my signature.
It's definitely
Now
something that when I see it, I associate it with you. So out of curiosity, for folks who maybe don't understand STOL flying, they're out there, flying at sort of a normal, tricycle configuration, 172, reasonable runway lengths, paved. What are some of the ways that you could describe the differences between that type of flying from an energy management perspective? I think I'll just go round robin here. Trent, I'll start with you again. So, I mean, how long did it take for you to really sort of figure out the uniqueness of that type of flying?
I guess I jumped into landing off field pretty quick, but as far as mastering the art of landing slow at the right spot at the right time, I'm still working on that. There's definitely a lot more at play. You're flying a lot closer to the kind of ragged edge of stall. To land short, you got to land slow, and you got to know your plane pretty well and know the conditions and know that you're safe in that environment. So there's a lot of different variables, but it doesn't matter the airplane you're in. I mean, the people with the 172s, you could have a ton of fun going out and picking a line on the runway and seeing if you can touch down there and get stopped 3 lines later. There's ways that you can build your skill set and practice and have the same kind of fun we have regardless of the airplane. So
what about for you, Nat?
I would say I'm even more so on still working on it side of things. We've only been flying our airplane for just over 2 years, and that's the first tail dragger I've ever flown. I've never flown anything with big wheels on it before that either. So definitely still working on my skills and, judging fields and that sort of thing. But like Trent said, I've always been intrigued by the, like picking a spot, putting it down there, being right on the center of the runway, all of that sort of stuff that comes along with those skills that you need to be able to transfer over to being able to land on a shorter runway. So, yeah, I don't know what else can I say. Yeah, I'm still.
Mark, out of curiosity, do you, and this is probably such a basic question, but I would imagine that in addition to just sort of keeping an eye on your gauges, the airplane really has to, it's really talking to you. To Trent's point of you really need to know it. What is that type of flying like?
You know, I'm glad you asked. It's kind of the thing I wanted to bring up and touch on a little bit. And in relations to your question, you started the question with, you know, managing the airplane from an energy management standpoint. They're light. There's no stored energy in these airplanes. And so they react real quick, both off the throttle, they slow fast, and on the throttle, they accelerate quick. And so the polishing and perfecting of flying a bush plane is polishing and perfecting your ability to move the throttle that much and that much and that much. People get out of a Cessna or a Pilatus or anything where it's a lot of throttle and a lot of delay. Even like a 172, it's a lot of throttle and a lot of delay to accelerate, and you pull the throttle and there's a lot of weight to keep pounding it and plowing it through the air. But on these bush planes, the tiniest movement is an immediate slow and an immediate acceleration. And so I think the best tip I could give anybody from an energy management standpoint in backcountry flying is less is more. Teeny throttle movements, and you'll find that hitting a line gets a lot easier.
Kevin, what do you think?
Practice, practice, practice. You know, we always say we have a license to learn, a certificate fly, and that's really what it is. Power and energy management is something that is extremely weak for most pilots. You go out and give a BFR to a fella, you ask them when the last time was they stalled their aircraft. Oh, I haven't stalled it since my last BFR or since I got my certificate. And I can say, I was thinking about this yesterday. I think I'm going to make a video on how many stalls we do a week. But when you're training pilots, I mean, we're out stalling these aircraft all the time. And really where that goes to is the bottom end, the back end of that speed. And where STOL really accelerates is that power and energy management. You got to be able to make those little tiny finite moves with that throttle. You got to be able to turn the airplane sideways, stay on track, stay on course, provide a higher angle of attack to slow that energy down. Remember, pitch controls airspeed, power controls how fast we want to get there. And so pitch that aircraft up in a slip, or as we come in to maintain that slow speed as we creep to that line. And so many people aren't proficient at that because they don't go out and practice it. They go to their home airport. It's a 5,000-foot runway. They land anywhere they want. If you're on a 5,000-foot runway, hit the 1,000-foot markers every single time. You know, somebody said the other day, hey, should I put 20 degrees flaps? That, you know, optimum performance is 20 degrees. Well, do you want anything less than optimum performance? Get your 20 degrees in. Let's get her going. And so, you know, it's practice, practice, practice. And I could be long-winded on every one of these topics, but the more you do it, the better you'll get. Immerse yourself in it and practice, practice, practice. Go stall your airplane, fly slow flight, pick a mark on the runway and hit it and land on it. So much you can do. And STOL flying is the future of our sport. It's exciting.
It really is. I do believe that. I also know that you instruct people. And so as you're instructing those pilots, do you find that people are coming to you with previous flight experience? And is the transition a bit of a slap in the face if they were learning at the 172 at their airport and then they come out to your flight school and now they're not in a 172? Or what has your experience been with the pilots who come to you for training?
You know, this isn't to throw anybody under the bus because everybody's trying to do good things. But I think that pilots that are getting instruction should be pushing themselves. And I think that instructors should also be pushing themselves to get better. There's a lot of instructors out there that are very good instructors with only 300 hours of flight time. But then there's instructors out there with 300 hours of flight time and lack that real world experience. And so whether you're a CFI with 300 or 30,000 hours, you still got to be practicing. Funny story, I got in my 180. I hadn't been in my 180 for about 3 weeks and went and landed the other day, and it was blowing. It was crosswind, and I actually had sweaty palms. And I thought to myself, damn, Quinner, you're not proficient in your aircraft right now. You've been flying your Cub everywhere. And I hadn't flown my wagon for probably 2-3 weeks, a month. and I'm doing 55, 60 miles an hour, feeling like I'm a rocket ship, which is actually slow, but compared to the Cub, I thought to myself, that's it. I'm coming back tonight to fly. I'm going to fly this in the morning. The Cub's not going to get flown for a few days because I need to get proficient in this thing. And so my point is that if you're not practicing and you're not doing it all the time, skills can go to the waste. And so if you're a pilot at home wanting to be a STOL pilot and you haven't slow flight your aircraft, you haven't stalled your aircraft in a number of weeks, months, years, you need to go do that first before you ever think about doing all this other stuff. Go become proficient in what you have. And last but not least, that little 172, there's what they call the green bean in Alaska, has been crushing the light touring competition, which are all the 170s with that nose wheel. It's a light 172. They get on the brakes, they lock it up, and he's performing incredible. So you don't need big tires. You can fly with a nose wheel. Cub Crafters just made a nose wheel carbon Cub that is incredible. And boy, oh boy, the internet's like blowing up the fact they put a nose wheel on a carbon Cub. But what an opportunity for pilots to get into off-airport flying in a safe aircraft. And again, I could go on and on and on. What do you want to talk about?
I love that you call it an opportunity, because there definitely is, I think, two ways to perceive that. And I agree, whatever it is that gets people interested in aviation, that's what I'm for at the end of the day. I'm going to take an opportunity to ask each one of you what flying means to you. And Kevin, I'll start with you. What does flying mean to you?
Absolute freedom, nothing more.
Well put.
100% freedom.
Nat, 100%. What does flying mean to you?
Flying is community to me. It's essentially my whole life, work and fun. So it's such a great community.
Becomes definitely a part of your fiber once you find your way, your path to aviation. Trent, what does flying mean to you?
Well, Quinn took mine. I was going to say freedom. That's what I kind of tell everyone. Like we live in such a two-dimensional world. You can go forward, back, left, or right, but going up, that's something that we don't normally have the freedom to do. So being able to go up there, you're not constricted to roads. You can go anywhere you want, whenever you want. Ultimate freedom, but also the responsibility. I think all pilots, we take pride in our skill set and our knowledge on it, and taking the responsibility to be a safe and proficient pilot. So those are the two things I'll say.
And then for you, Mark, what does flying mean?
Family. First and foremost, flying's my family. I mean, not just because my family's aviators, but my flying family is also my family. And that sense of community, like Nat said, it becomes a family. I mean, it's a special thing.
Giving us this opportunity and making the time for us to come together, even if it has to be digitally, sort of exemplifies what you're talking about. And I just want to say thank you to everyone on our panel. They are all active on social media. So whatever your preferred platform is, you can definitely check out what they're doing. Thank you so much for making the time. And for those of you watching our EAA Spirit of Aviation Week coverage, we appreciate you.